Standing outside Adelaide Oval at the end of day 4 of the third Ashes Test, Australia 4 wickets away from securing the series, winning 3-0 with 2 tests to play. I've got Matt Roller here from ESPNcricinfo and also The Athletic. I've got a fly in front of me and Ben Horne as well. He's not a fly, he's a very respectable journalist. 228 runs needed for England to pull off an unlikely victory. Might start with you, Matt. We've spoken about the death of Bazball, but where to from here in all seriousness for this English Test side?
Well, I mean, the series feels like a massive anticlimax at the moment. I suppose first and foremost they got another 2 tests to play. Got to try and avoid a whitewash, which would be a pretty horrendous result. But I think fundamentally there's going to be scrutiny on people at the top of the chain in terms of management. I think particularly Rob Key is going to come under real scrutiny. Brendan McCullum. I think Ben Stokes' future is probably up to him, to be honest. But I think if you look at the decisions that Key in particular has made over the past couple of years, he's almost put them in a bind with McCullum. McCullum's contract runs until the end of 2027. That's another 2 years away. That covers the next home Ashes series plus the ODI World Cup in South Africa. It's going to be pretty expensive to get rid of him, and that's all Key's decision. So I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on him at the top.
I want to get to the importance of this Ashes series in a moment and the context around it and tie in some of Jeetan Patel's comments after play at the end of yesterday in that prism. But Ben, just before that, what's your view in terms of how England move forward from here, particularly given the dismissals today? And I want to give some credit to Zach Crawley, who batted very well and nicely and sensibly, very anti-Bazball. And Ben Stokes got a brilliant ball from Nathan Lyon, so I think he escapes major scrutiny from a batting perspective today. But the dismissals of Ben Duckett, to a lesser degree, Ollie Pope was brilliantly caught. Probably wasn't a great shot, but not an atrocious shot. But most of all, Harry Brook.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think England would be pretty keen to make 2 changes for the next test. But the question is, do they actually have 2 blokes to come in? I mean, Ben Duckett and Ollie Pope, I would find very hard to select for Boxing Day. Both just seem to have lost confidence. They seem to be kind of getting worse the longer the series goes. I imagine Ollie Pope's going to be the first one in the gun probably, and that would be Jacob Bethel coming in. But yeah, if it was Duckett going too, I mean, I don't know what they would do, whether they'd have to call someone into the squad, Matt, or...
I think for what it's worth that Duckett will probably get the series just because of the paucity of alternatives, especially on the ground in the first place. I suppose you could just about fashion a team where you could maybe have, I don't know, Bethel moving up or Jax coming in as a sort of, free hit opener almost, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think given the consistency that Duckett has shown in the 3 years leading up to this tour, I think they're going to stick with him. I think he will probably try to reflect on this tour as something that is conditions based rather that doesn't suit the way he plays, constantly prodding, the dismissals in this test, both being good examples of why it hasn't worked. But yeah, I think Pope absolutely was playing for his career today, and for all that he was dismissed from a good ball and an exceptional catch, he has looked like getting out pretty much every other ball that he's played in this test match.
Yeah.
Who do you think English fans and people back home are most have, and not to mention the hordes that have come out here, who I actually do feel sorry for, who do they most have in the gun or just angriest at it? Is it Key? Is it McCullum? Is it Stokes? Is it Pope? Is it Brook? Is it Duckett? Is it someone else that I've forgotten? Is it Shoaib Bashir? Whoever put Shoaib Bashir in this position to start with? Will Jacks? Who's number one on the hit list?
I think there's a fair amount of frustration with both Key and McCullum, I would say, in that I think there is a sense that England have been pretty dogmatic in the way that they've played cricket over a long period of time, and I think there's still a sense that they're sort of riding off the very early success that this regime had when they were playing against and beating teams that fundamentally, for the most part, they should be beating as England. England are generally the 3rd, 4th or 5th best test team in the world, that sort of ballpark. And at the start of the regime, the results that were held up as brilliant were beating New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan and New Zealand again, which is fine, but nothing particularly special. With the benefit of hindsight, obviously they did play some exceptional attacking, fearless cricket in that period. But if you look at the results since the 23 Ashes, when I think their style did work pretty well, I think they were probably probably did edge that series. If you look since then, assuming that it goes south here, they're going to be 1-12 and lost 13 since the start of 2024, which is not great at all. And to do that while winding a lot of people up with the narrative that they've pushed by sort of constantly deriding the value of county cricket, deriding the value of anything that people have sort of understood about how Test cricket is played over the years, and saying this is our way, we're going to do it this way, we're going to try it our way. I actually think one of the most frustrating things about England this tour is that they've they folded so quickly in terms of their style. There's been so much desperation, so much confusion in their game plan and how they've played over the past couple of years. I think people would almost forgive them more if they'd gone down in a flaming mess, all guns blazing. But instead, Australia have scored about, I think, 0.6, 0.7 runs per over quicker than England in this series. And a lot of that has obviously just been the quality of the two attacks.
Yeah.
But England had a big project to try and move on from the experienced guys that they've lost, and it hasn't worked.
For sure. I mean, I think the other thing in terms of narratives, and you talk about the county cricket narrative, but the one for me is that and this is where the narratives don't align with the decisions, because you build up this narrative around this being the big series and the series of our lives, Brendan McCullum's words, and England painstaking. Ben Stokes is constantly talking down the World Test Championship standings because it's all through the prism of the Ashes, and yet they tie up McCullum to the under-27, which obviously aligns with the next Ashes series, but not this one. This is the series of our lives, and then somehow Chetan Patel pops up on BBC at the end of day 3 of the test and says, "Oh no, that was your narrative." I mean, that is just, as I wrote today, either he doesn't know what has been said, not entirely impossible. He has forgotten it, also not impossible, or he's gaslighting, which I think is probably a strong favourite, and that just beggars belief. Ben, it would be remiss not to touch though on Australia, because this has been an exceptional effort. I mean, it's worked so brilliantly in the end. You've got Pat Cummins and Nathan Lyon have come back and done a magnificent job in central pillars in this test. No one's been more across Pat Cummins, his injury and his rehabilitation, Willie Woney story than you. Has it surpassed your expectations of what they've got out of Pat Cummins while the Ashes are still alive?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just amazing that you could come back after no bowling from an injury like this and not have any match practice, and just be as good as what he's been in this test. So, I mean, yeah, that's just been stunning. The interesting thing for me is, does Pat Cummins play the next test? Because the Ashes is won now, and mission accomplished. And I just think with all the cricket that they've got coming up at the end of 2026 and then beyond, I think that they have to stay conservative with Pat Cummins. I'd be resting him in Melbourne and playing him in Sydney. He might get the chance to lead them to a whitewash victory in Sydney. So that will be an interesting one to watch, whether Pat Cummins is pushed through from here. Nathan Lyon was exceptional. I mean, there was a lot of pressure on him coming into this test because dropped for 2 of the previous 3 tests. He barely bowled in the one he did play. And, I think there was, expectation that this is a pitch where he was going to need to play a big role, and he did. I mean, the way that he out-bowled his opposite number, if you like, was, probably the single biggest factor in this match, and it's embarrassed England again. And, and I think it's a confidence booster that Nathan Lyon probably needed, and sets him up to go all the way through to at least India 2027. So Australia have pulled every correct rein, really, with their selections. There was doubt over the bowling attack without Cummins and Hazelwood. The others have stepped up. It's just been a very well-managed series by Australia. The batting lineup is still a bit of a funny one, and I'm tipping there'll be another change or two for Melbourne, which is funny when you're 3-0 up in the series. But that's another question with does Usman Khawaja keep his place in the team?
Yeah, I think he probably does, although I could see the argument for not picking him, but I think he deserves to. I think you've got to reward form, and I just don't think... I think Josh Inglis has now had a couple of tests. I know it's been stop-start his test career, 2 in Sri Lanka, 1 in the West Indies, and then 2 here, but really it's been diminishing returns since that century, or very few returns since that century, and it's just more to the point. It just seems a pace... Unfortunately, he's actually a victim of Alex Carey being such a good batsman at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, Carey's doing so well at 6, and actually... Here's just one thought to leave you on. Is Alex Carey the most improved cricketer in the world? Oh, I think he is. Who else has improved? I mean, don't get me wrong, he's been a good player for Australia. Yep. But his last 12 to 18 months, both with gloves, I think he's definitely a much improved wicketkeeper. And as a batter, he's an extraordinary touch. Can you think of anyone else in recent times that's sort of excelled at like him?
No, I think he's absolutely a standout. If you think of where he was 4 years ago in the equivalent series, he was sort of seen as a white ball player who was being fashioned into a test cricketer, and that fashioning is complete, I suppose. He was speaking about the work he's done and the improvement he feels he's made over the past 4 years, and it feels like he's absolutely there.
The fly's starting to attack me now, Daniel.
What's the old saying about they said to Jardine, don't hit our flies, they're the only friends you got here, Matt Roller? No, Matt's got a few friends. He's a friend of the show. Thanks so much. We'll have you. We'll be back tomorrow to wrap it all up. Australian 84 because there's a bit of rain around. We aren't expecting though that it'll play a big role. So see you tomorrow.